So it only took like 5 years, but I think I finally figured out the Roland MC-101. It's still some kind of a love-hate relationship, but I still think that this is the best portable drum machine out there, unless you're willing to spend like $2,000. And in my opinion, it's still the best choice in case of file management and sample management. So here are some thoughts that improved my workflow and maybe you can benefit from them. My first idea would be to get really good headphones, because for me, the sound out of the box is not that beefy and a bit thin. And for me, it's not that engaging to play if you're listening to it via small headphones and it sounds really cheap. So my tip would be to get headphones that boost the sound a little. I got those Cos Porter Pros. They still look like from the 80s, but they boost the low end of the sound and it sounds much more finalized and much richer, and it's much more engaging to play around with it. Plus it has this angled headphone jack. So if you're sitting on the couch or on the bed and rest the unit against your tummy, it won't bend the cable because the headphone jack is already angled. The feature we are all probably missing the most is that the unit by itself doesn't have an audio input. So if you want to record an external audio, you have to go through some kind of computer. And I was always looking for some kind of a standalone audio input device. So what I came up with, and probably I went a little overboard with it, is I got one of those old Mac Mini computers, and it has already a built-in audio input and a USB out, and you can use a software like Rogue Amoeba Loopback. You can put it in the auto start of this device and you can just power it on. It takes about 20 seconds until it's booted and connected to the device, and then you can just use the audio input and you can use the whole thing like a standalone audio input. So probably the most important tip I have is to use your own custom startup template, because it really strongly impacts how your workflow with the device is. And you can choose by going into utility system and have to set load project. It chooses which project it boots on startup, and you can set your own template here. And the good part about using a startup template is not only that you can choose your default sounds that you can get right into jamming and not have to choose the sound first, but it also lets you store things like the arpeggiator settings, the key settings, or project settings. But the best part is that you can also choose a default track setup. And I think this is very important for the way you work with the device and for your workflow in general. There are many approaches to this, but I think I came up with a setup that works for me the best. So the idea would be to divide your 4 tracks as follows. You want at least to keep your drum track as a MIDI track, because you can do the most manipulation with it, mute and unmute individual parts. But then the idea would be to keep 2 tracks as looper tracks, because if you want to overdub on tracks, you need at least 2 tracks to bounce the tracks back and forth. So that leaves 1 track as synthesizer track, and the idea would be to store all your parts as clips on this track and to bounce them right onto one of the looper tracks. So for example, I start recording the drums, record, bass line into track 2 as a MIDI part, but then I immediately bounce this part from track 2 as audio to track 3. Now I can record something new on track 2 as a MIDI part. Now overdub 2 and 3 together as audio on track 4. And now I can keep repeating this process. So I can keep recording new parts as MIDI parts on track 2 and then bounce it down on those 2 looper parts, which I can alternate between. And that way you can do indefinite overdubbing, but you still keep all your synthesizer parts as MIDI parts on this track 2 as MIDI clips. In case of sound design, since the latest update, you have the option to manipulate the sounds like in a full synthesizer, but it's not really that intuitive and you have to do a lot of menu diving. So you all know that you have to choose partial edit and go all through those parameters to set the sound up. So my tip would be to create some templates for the different sound types you want to create. And then you have a basis already and can manipulate from there. So for example, I stored them as clip files and I have like one oscillator with filter, dual oscillator, LFO modulation, pulse wave modulation, ring modulation. I already have those as basic synth models set up. And whenever I want to choose one of them, I can just load the clip. And I can go from there and manipulate from there. And you can also choose how you want to assign your parameters. So cutoff resonance, I have here decay. And you can reuse those templates over and over again to start a new sound. But you don't have to dial in this every time you want to start designing a sound. Probably the feature I missed the most when I got the unit was an ability to store certain sounds as a favorite, because you have over 2000 built-in sounds and it's really easy to get lost in there. There still is no favorite function, but what you can do is you can load sounds from other projects. So you can create one designated project that holds all your favorite sounds, and you can use the load sound from project function to load a sound from there. It lets you store up to 4 times 16 sounds. You can think of it like banks in a classic synthesizer when you can store your basses, leads, pads, whatever, in different banks. So I hit browse from project. In my case, I named it __ favorites, so it's always right in the back. I can just scroll until I'm at the end, and then it easily lets me choose my favorite horse gallop sound. The same goes for drum kits. So if I edited and assigned the drum kit on different pads, I want to be able to store the setup as it is, maybe even with the filter and effect parameters, and being able to recall it for later. So what I did is save them as clips, scroll all the way down and choose save clip, and you can save all your drum breaks like packages that contains all the samples and already the edited effects. And if I want to load it later, you can just choose an empty clip, hit load clip, clip file, and there you have all your drum breaks and you can play them. You could use the same approach I showed earlier with the favorite sounds, but I like to keep it separate, and for me it doesn't get that messy with all the files if I have drum breaks in one folder and favorite sounds in this other project file where I can load it from. In terms of file management, you want to avoid to clutter your device with thousands of saved projects. So I found a way to keep it pretty organized. The first idea is to have my default preset named 00 in it. And if I save from there, I can just raise the number in front pretty easily. And I don't have to choose a new name every time, or I end up adding random text in the end just to avoid overwriting existing projects. And the second tip would be, if I find an idea more promising, I add a plus sign in front of the name, and that way it gets sorted to the front of the project so I can access it more quickly, and I also know which projects I want to keep working on. And as a little bonus tip, I want to show that it's really quick and easy to chop up a break using Audacity. I used Logic Pro before, and it's really advanced with detecting all those transient and stuff. But if you want to do it the old MPC style, I found it really tedious and much easier to do in Audacity. You can just go in, select the part you want to slice, hit, I think, C to snap to the 0 crossings, then hit Command B. You can do this multiple times for each of the drum hits you want to separate, and it creates these labels for each of the selections. And when you go to export audio and select multiple files, you can split files based on labels, and it creates different files for all of those selections, and you have your drum break sliced up into individual drum hits. I found this approach to be much faster than with any other DAW. So after I figured all that out, I can finally start making some beats.